Hello everybody, it's time to get the Moser Avalon horse clippers back together again. I'm Simon and welcome to Oakside Saddlery. Now all the parts have been cleaned up, we've got rid of all the old grease out of them. Parts on here are pretty good. The bit what we had a problem with was this blade carrier. We may be lucky, it looks like the springs have just come unhooked on it and we should be able to get them back together again, so I won't know until we try it. So that'll be our last test. That's not too bad. I can replace that if need be. Although they are in two separate parts listed, this part and that part separate, so it'd be this part would need to replace. We can do that separately and it can be done afterwards. So first thing we're going to look at then, we just get all our parts sorted out of what's going to go where, and we'll look at getting this motor back in place. So let's get rid of all these. Look at that. These little bits I still haven't managed not yet to lose. I'm probably going to lose them before I come to put them together. They are all part of our bearings that go onto there, yeah? Oh, let's get rid of them. Let's see about this motor then. Setting this case in this way round, blowing it out, so I can never really do a lot with these until we test them. Feels quite smooth still, it's spun all right. Switches and the wiring all looks pretty good. I'm going to put a little drop of oil just inside there somewhere, so we'll do that first of all. Nothing complicated. So I haven't used this just yet because it's not coming out, and then when it does there's loads of it. So let's get rid of that. Again, paper towels, favourites, remember. Hair or something caught in there, get rid of that part there. One in there we can't really get to, I'm not going to pull all that bearing out there to do that. So that one feels pretty good. It's going to sit inside here with this, so it rests against there, doesn't it? This part here was just on the side of it. I'm not going to do anything to it. It quite happily sat in there. Just going to stretch that case out a little bit as it goes in. The switch sits itself just inside there, and the cable, we'll figure out which way it wants to lay. Wants to sit that way. It's going to sit just in there, so it's not too bad altogether. Got a little cable clamp there. So this part here, and it was these two screws. When I come to put these together again, sometimes after a while, I struggle to remember which parts go where. So these are little Torx ones. So again, we can just see there's a crosshead on there if you need to. Little Torx settings. So we're going to use the fitting that goes into that one there. That's the right one. It's going to sit across that. I'm going to line this back up and just ease it in place. So again, when we do these, it's a plastic casing. The last thing I want to do is force any of these screws through this. If they don't fit in nice and simple, then they're probably cross-threaded. So if you notice here, I'm actually just doing the whole thing with that drive bit on its own there, without actually on the driver. So that's in there nicely. Let's tighten them up properly. So again, no real pressure. I'm just going to line it up, and if you watch this turn, you'll see that it just rotates in my hand when it's had enough. There we go. So switches in place, motors in place. Bearing there all feels pretty good. It's got a little bit of a twist on that. See where it flexes? I can hear it actually rubs. Let's get rid of that hair. Feel where it rubs on there a little bit. Hopefully when that's actually in place it will stay still and not rub that. There was a few little marks in there, but nothing too bad. So our next part here then is this gear cog. We've checked all the gears on it. They all look pretty good. The teeth are all good. We have one washer on the very bottom, one washer on the top, and a little circlip on the top of there to hold it all together. So we'll give this a bit of a wipe off. So it looks good. Bearing feels good. I'm going to put a little drop of oil on that bearing again. Just in there, work it in a little bit. Feels better already. Get rid of that excess because it had grease around it, so we're going to wipe that off and get some grease around it. Bottom of this, one of them washers. Again, so it had grease. Let's find some grease in. Again, nothing special, just a bit of multi-purpose grease. So we want a bit on the shaft of it. So it's going to sit to the bottom. As we push that washer on, it'll push that down. So these things are really good. Greasy fingers work really well. So one goes on there. Slide it down to the bottom. Next one's going to sit on top of that gear, so a little tiny bit of grease for that. It's going to sit on there. We want it to go into the shaft at the same time. We also want some grease around the edge of these. Again, they don't have to be massive amounts of this. It's just enough to stop any sort of roughness and a bit of lubrication for it, really. A lot of times when it's metal on plastic or nylon, they don't need any grease or anything at all. So we've got grease on there, a bit of grease on the end there. That's going to sit on top of there. It's off centre, so it always makes me laugh. It goes. That's going to just sit on there. Top of this, it had a bit of grease around here as well, and a bit of grease around that bearing. We'll sort a bit more of that out in a minute. So I want to get rid of some of that now. I have another washer that went on somewhere on there. It goes. Common thing you get, last use that something doing dirty things, and now it's dirty. So if I don't wipe it off, I put hair and back into it. Next one we need is this one, which is going to be stuck onto it. It's going to sit right on the edge of that. There's a little ridge built into the edge. Sun's just come out again. It's just going to slide. This is back over there. It goes. That's clicked into place. So now we have our motor and our bearing, our cog, our drive cog for it. Next thing we've got is this lever. Remember, it has a bit of sponge and the foam to go around it. These, when I've washed these, they do tend to keep the moisture in them, so it's always a nice thing just to give them a last little squeeze out just before. I've left them in the sun before and it dries them out nicely. So this is going to sit around there. It has got a little notch on one side of it which fitted against this cup on here, so when it sits on there it's going to sit against that. This is a pivot, so this wants a bit of bearing on it. See where it's got a bit of a looseness to it. I'm going to put a little drop of oil on there. So a little drop of oil on it, it just makes it a little bit easier for it to turn, prevents a bit of wear. So it's going to sit on there. It had a little bit of grease either side of it, so a little bit of grease into the base of it there. Sits in there, which means it's going to be onto that, and there'll be a pivot onto there. A sponge filter is going to sit up alongside it. It sits in that little box there, and it will sit inside this. Again, we need a bit more grease inside there. So all we need to do is just wipe a little bit around the edge of this, because that's where that bearing's going to run. So we'll sit on there, and into that little pin there. So that's that part set up. Get rid of the excess grease off my fingers again. So we've now got our filter, and I don't think it's a filter, to be honest, because the filter's at the back of there. There's a filter. I think it's just like a gasket almost to stop the hair coming through it. So I always called it a filter, but it's not really. Everything's back in place. The hook goes onto here, just sits on top of it. Another one of these fun parts, when I try to get them together, they all fall apart. On the top then, we've got another little gasket here. These ones, lots of times when you pull them off, you're like, which way round does it go? Because it's sort of, oh. But a lot of time when you can tell, there's a little ridge on the back of that, which is going to sit on that like there, so it will just sit in place there. It wants to make sure it pushes all the way down, and all that's going to do is put a rubber gasket at the top of your blades there. So motors themselves, clippers themselves are all together. This one here is going to just sit straight on top of that, press down on that motor into there, and it'll all hold it in place. So this could be a nice part, because that sponge hasn't necessarily lined up, and it might take a little bit of jiggling to push it into place. See where it's not going to sit down there? Another little look. Quite double the switch now. So again, that part there, it's going to want to be right in the centre, I think. So another go. That's better. There we go. So without any screw pressure on it, you can see all the seams have all joined up nicely. Front of our blade carrier and that is all in there nicely. Switch sitting in right place, and the hooky thing for hanging it on your belt, I suppose, is tidily. 4 screws These 4 again are nice little ones. They're going to sit one in each one because I don't trust these. One of them was loose, remember, when we took them apart. I'm just going to do them up first of all by hand. See where that one doesn't want to go? If I screw it back, there's a little click. You probably couldn't hear that, and it sits in place nicely. Same with this one then. Fits in place nicely. Oops. Might have heard that click. So all I'm doing there is these, because these felt loose when I first done them, I'm a bit more dubious about it. So all I'm doing, normally we would tighten in this direction. In fact, that one's gone straight in. I would tighten in that direction. On these ones, I've gone the wrong way first, and all I'm looking for is as it goes a click, as it drops past that thread. There it goes. So it was a very faint click, and then I know that that thread is lined up, so we can tighten it up. It's just an easy way of making sure you don't get an extra thread, because they're self-tapping screws in the plastic. Still set to do up things. Nice and gentle as it goes. Not forcing it. I don't know what these electric screwdrivers do. Probably about 5 maybe pound a foot, something like that. That's all it needs. Nicely sorted out. So get rid of this. Get rid of that. This blade carrier then. So the blade carriers, they have 2 little tiny springs, which you might be able to see just there. There's one there and one there. Quite often these either get snapped off because they've not been put on properly. When they take them apart, clean a bit of hair out, and then they fall apart. But these little 2 springs need to fit in these 2 little holes. So they're not the easiest of things to get together, but the way you do them is you line them up. So there's one in, there's the second one in, line it across, and it should, see where it's just sitting on the edge there, just push it and it'll click into place. And that didn't go, see, so this might be where it's broke. So we're going to line them up, push them across, click into place. It's just enough. See where it's just sticking out? It might be really hard to see on here. I might see if I can zoom it in a bit, but it just goes on there. See where they're sitting on the end of it? And that's the idea of it. That's what holds it in place. But when it's loose like this, there's no pressure on the back of this to hold it there, and that's when it often gets caught up. So people put it in, they'll have one messed up and it won't line up. But I think we might get away with it. I'll try it in a minute and see what we get. But it should, hopefully, cross your fingers, everybody cross the fingers, fit them up. So it's going to just sit in there. 2 little screws. These are Phillips screws. That's a Torx. Shouldn't be using, or not Torx, Posi drive. Shouldn't really be using it on there, but it's all right. It'll do the job. Goes into a nice little metal nut that's melded into your plastic as they build it. So again, I'm not going to tighten these up tight first time. I'm just going to make sure they sit in place first. Once they're in there, tighten one up slightly, almost to the end of it. It's not quite there, it's just tightened by it. Tighten the other one up. What I'm trying not to do is get that carrier twisted. So that one's going tight. That one's going tight. So now we've got them in there tight, I'm going to actually do them up a little bit tighter. You can get away a lot more with these because of where they are. So that actually feels pretty good. So our clippers are back together. What we need to check is whether this blade is going to stay on. So I had a few blades with these ones. So this is one set. They've been blown over, but they need a drop of oil on them. Not too bad. To put one of these blades on, they're quite easy. That part there hooks into that latch there, and the little spring that's just in there hooks around the front of it. So as it goes into here, we can line it up. Line your little lever up there with your blades by just pushing your blades across to where you want. That's it lined up onto it. It hasn't clicked in place yet, and we should be able to get a proper click. I'm guessing that it's going to stay on there. So she may be lucky. And it all seems to fit as it is. Releasing them, press your button in, lever it out. Just slides off. Simples. So again, push it in, line it up. Yeah, that hasn't gone in. It feels like it's gone in. It's not in place. You need to get that last little click. And when you get that click through, that's when they stay on. So it's hooked up inside that latch there. Take them back off again. Simple to go, aren't they? Just make sure that little catch gets onto it. So, nice simple repair. Didn't cost anything really. Just a nice simple part, fixing a few bits and putting them back together properly. Otherwise, clipper servicing, clipper repairs, I can do all of them for you. I do dryers and blasters as well. So if you need your servicing, just contact me via my website, which is oaksidesaddlery.co.uk. Otherwise, leave a comment below, hit that like, subscribe, and you may see some more of your clippers that need servicing or repairing. And thank you very much, and have a nice day.